Approach Control, this is Podcast 1.
Go ahead, Podcast 1. This is Approach Control.
Tower, this is Free Range Texan Airways. We've turned on final approach and are beginning our descent.
Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has turned on the fasten your seatbelt sign and has informed me that we will be landing on schedule for our bi-weekly Free Range Texan podcast. Please remain seated until Podcast 1 rolls to a complete stop. On behalf of our captain and crew, we thank you for flying Free Range Texan Airways.
All right, quiet, Studio A. Quiet on the set. Control room?
All set. Edit wave rolling. Tracks are hot.
Mic check, sweetie pie.
Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2, 3.
Michael, give me a sound check.
Hello, check, 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 check. All right, team, let's give it our best.
Thank you, Michael. All set. Attention in the studio. Stand by. Action.
Well, howdy, y'all. The Free Range Texan podcast is underway. This here program is a special look at the way life is shaping up for folks in the U.S. of A., seen through the eyes of a born and bred West Texan. Our host is a veteran broadcaster who is known for his campfire visits on radio. Michael Shawn is standing by.
Wearing a serape.
So here he is, our host, a real Free Range Texan himself, Michael Shawn.
Free Range Texan Podcast, Episode 18. Boy, have we got some moments coming up for you on this podcast. First of all, Jenni Dale Lord, the Jenni Dale Lord of the Jenni Dale Lord Band, is going to be our guest on this show. She's even going to do some of her great music. Now, if that alone weren't enough, before we get to that, I'm going to share with you, on a very personal note, the story of my last ride. I rode motorcycles for 40 years, but I'm going to tell you about my last ride. You see if you can figure it out. Also, if we have time, are we going to have time for the deal with Grandpa? My grandpa, James Everett Bowman, was a legendary great guy, but some of his greatest stories were when he was a young kid growing up in a brand new century. I'm going to share a true story about my grandpa at the campfire, all that and more coming up on this Episode 18 of the Free Range Texan Podcast. Let's get ready to ride. Have digital microphone will travel. Listen to secretly in she sheds and man caves everywhere. You're listening to the Free Range Texan Podcast. Now, honestly, folks, there are a few of you there that's known old Michael Shawn for quite a while, and those people know that for a number of years I was an avid motorcycle rider. But let me tell you a story about my last ride. I was out on a country back road. Man, it was a good ride. I all of a sudden, though, had to swerve to avoid hitting a deer. I lost control and landed in a ditch. Oh, I was dazed and confused, and I began to crawl out of the ditch to the edge of the road when a shiny new convertible pulled up with what can only be described as a really beautiful woman at the wheel. She asked me, "Are you okay?" Well, as I looked up, I noticed that she was wearing this great-looking blouse, and she really looked good. "I'm okay," I said as I pulled myself up to the side of her car. She said, "Get in. I'll take you home so that I can clean and bandage that nasty scrape on your head." Well, I said, "That's nice of you, but I don't think my wife would like me doing that." "Oh, come now. I'm a nurse," she said. "I need to see if you have any more scrapes, then treat them properly." Well, she was really pretty and very persuasive, and being sort of shaken up and weak, I agreed. But I repeated, "I'm sure my wife won't like this." Well, we arrived at her place, which was just a few miles away, and after a couple of cold, what can only be described as adult beverages, and the bandaging, I thanked her and said, "I feel a lot better now, but I know my wife is going to be really upset, so I'd better go now." "Don't be silly," she said. "Stay for a while. She won't know anything, and by the way, where is she?" Well, I scratched my head and I said, "Well, she's still in the ditch with the motorcycle, I guess."
Well, if that don't beat all. Can you believe he said that?
Interrupt this Free Range Texan podcast for a special update. Free Range Texan producers have announced that they are now officially opening auditions to fill a podcast roving reporter position. Details to follow. Free Range Texan has been one of the first podcasts to open our blog and Facebook presence to our listeners, sending in selfies with their name and where they're from to be posted on our blog at freerangetexan.net. Also, we have opened the Free Range talent file to submissions of talented listeners worldwide. And now, if all that weren't enough, the Free Range Texan Network is announcing the addition of an actual podcast roving reporter to cover unique and possibly explosive events of our time. Free Range talent submission, sending in your Free Range Texan listener posse snapshots, and even auditioning for our rover reporter can all be accomplished at one place. Go to freerangetexan.net, then click on the blog. There you will find our info at freerangetexan.net email address. Snapshot, talent submissions, or auditions for our new Free Range Texan Network News Roving Reporter spot. Michael Shawn was recently overheard to say,
"Well, it doesn't pay much exactly, but we'll make them famous."
That's info at freerangetexan.net. Now back to our regularly scheduled podcast.
Have digital recording device will travel.
Listen closely as Michael Shawn drags the entire podcast world behind him, kicking and screaming as you listen to the Free Range Texan podcast.
It's time now for another segment of Free Range Talent, brought to you by A-Team PR, bringing a host of creative media production and public relations services to our exclusive list of clients. Maybe you could hire the A-Team. And now, here's the next segment of Free Range Talent. I tell you, our free-range talent just gets better and better, and this interview is no exception. We have Jenni Dale Lord standing by. How you doing, Jenni?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Well, we're blessed better than we deserve around the old free-range Texan here. We have had a great time. We've known for several days that this interview was going to take place, and we've had a really great time combing through your music and enjoying a tremendous body of work that you have put up and is available on the internet, and we'll talk about that before we get out of here.
Thank you. Well, I have been doing it for as long as I can remember, honestly. I moved to Austin in the summer of 2000 to pursue a music career, and I played music in Austin, and I did it part-time while I was over there and trying to make a living by day, because Austin is not near as affordable to live in as the good old city of Lubbock, which I'm so blessed to live here and be able to do music full-time. I've been doing it as a profession with nothing else going on since January of 2013, and it's been a blessing. I'm very excited.
All right, well, let me ask you a question that may be obvious to some people, but if I understand correctly, you grew up in Lubbock, Texas, out in West Texas. Is that correct?
Pretty much. My address technically was Lubbock. However, I lived somewhere in between Shallowater, New Deal, and Lubbock in the country. And I actually went to New Deal schools all the way through my 9th grade year. And then we moved into the big city of Lubbock.
So you were a country girl.
I was a country girl. I still am in some ways.
Who influenced you during that time?
Well, being a country girl, obviously, I was really fascinated with country music. And still number one in my heart today, and has been for as long as I can remember, is Miss Reba McEntire.
Oh, well, that's something we have in common.
Huge fan.
Yeah, absolutely. She's the type of entertainer that you don't mind telling anybody who asks, I'm a big Reba McEntire fan.
I agree. She's just phenomenal. I love her voice, and yes, as an entertainer, she was the first concert I ever really remember seeing. I don't remember the exact year, but it was the same night that the Lady Raiders won the Final Four or won the Grand Championship or whatever it was that they did, because I remember that was when they had the concerts in the Coliseum on Texas Tech campus, and we left the concert, and this whole campus was in an uproar, and I was like, what's going on? And they're like, we just won, woo! And so it was really awesome. So it's one of those nights I will never forget, not only because I walked out into that really great sight, but because the concert was so phenomenal. She changed dresses or outfits every single song. It was almost more of like a Broadway show with country music. I don't know, it was just phenomenal. I will never forget it for as long as I live.
I remember that night. It was all televised. That was a heck of a deal. You have a number of albums that you have released to date. How many is that exactly?
Well, truthfully, I have 5 albums plus a little EP that I did with my brother and his heavy metal band, believe it or not, back in the day. But you'll only really find me carrying around the 3 most recent ones, and I'm actually in the recording studio right now making another one. So I will tell you at a show that I have 3 and I'm working on a 4th, but truth be known, I have 5 and I'm working on a 6th.
And I think that's really interesting. You've lit a fire under us at the Free Range Texan. Jenni Dale Lord does heavy metal. Now, would that be a futile search on the internet, or is that out there?
Well, the album itself, or the EP, is called 10 Dead Roses. I didn't really do heavy metal exactly. There was a time, and I guess there still is, where hardcore music would have like a really melodic melody and singing to it, and then the screamo part would come in. So I did not do that part. I did the song, like the singing part of the song, and then when I was finished with my part, that's when my brother's singer frontman came in and did all the So, but that was on their album, and then I put that with an acoustic version of that song and just another acoustic song that my brother and I composed together on the album as well. Just a short little EP, just for fun.
Well, just for fun, I bet it was. And
it certainly was fun.
Well, it sounds like you come from a family that is talented in a number of ways. You grew up here in West Texas. In fact, we've established you were a country girl, and when you moved to town in Lubbock, you were starting out on a career. But at some point, you decided to leave West Texas and go on down to Austin, which so many of the singer-songwriters from our area often do. Some of them return, but a lot of them don't. But you spent, by my calculation, about 10 years in Austin. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then, without getting too personal, and then you made what was a real gear shift in the life of an entertainer. You decided to go back home. Can you tell us a little bit about that decision?
Sure. Well, in Austin, it is flooded with really talented musicians, and people there are willing to play for free just to get exposure, which of course I was too. So I wasn't able to devote 100% of my time to being a musician because I had to have, as you said, a real job, a day job. And so that was something that I wasn't really leaving behind when I came to Lubbock. I came to Lubbock because I got a divorce, and my mom was still here, and she said, why don't you come home and figure out what you want to do and how you want to be and get yourself back together emotionally and back on my feet and stuff. And so I came back to Lubbock and decided to finish my bachelor's at Texas Tech. And it was while I was going there that I was able to realize my dream of being a full-time musician, which I never would have thought that was something that I would have been able to do. Coming to Lubbock, it was just a really great blessing that was able to happen. So even though I left Austin under really sad circumstances for me, it really ended up being the best thing that I could have done.
I can't help but notice that you are all over the place. I got on your website and I was looking at your schedule. So many entertainers have said, if I could just stay busy, I just like to work. And that's the real kicker in being a singer-songwriter. If you can just continually work and share your music and continue to be in front of one type of audience or another that more and more appreciates you. People show up, they pay cover charges, they buy tickets, and they come in. So whether it's a club owner or a small venue owner or a regional venue owner, whatever, if you can get Jenni Dale Lord on your ticket for the evening, then she's a sure deal. You've got quite a following that shows up and enjoys spending the evening with you. When did that all take place? Because surely it wasn't like that the day you arrived in Lubbock.
Of course not. It's been gradual. You get one person that starts coming to every show, and then it's two, and then it's three, and before you know it, it just grows. And I'm so grateful for that. I have a very great fan base here in West Texas, and I'm always blessed to have them show up. But what surprised me the most, which I'm so grateful for, is actually last year I went on an East Coast tour. I did 23 states plus D.C. plus Montreal in 53 days. It was a whirlwind of fun. But we played a show in Norwood, Massachusetts. It was called the Fallout Shelter, and it was basically a house concert in a fallout shelter area, sort of a thing, a really awesome listening room, and we sold it out, and I was completely shocked and just so grateful. And that's when I was like, man, this is the greatest thing. I got to do this everywhere. I want to travel the country and try to do this everywhere. once you get a taste of it, you just want to keep going. So that's what I'm trying to do. I don't get to make it across the country as much as I would like to, but I am grateful for every time I travel to Texas, all over, and where you feel like it's something that you can do. Because this business, as much as I love it, it's not always encouraging. Sometimes the days are really hard, and sometimes you leave a show and you go, I don't even know why I do this. It's so emotionally trying. But then those days that are like you just described, that's when you go, I can do this. I think I really have the ability to do this. I've wanted to do this my whole life. From the very first time I started playing guitar and singing Reba McEntire songs, or the very first time I wrote my own song and realized the cathartic power of being able to express something that you've been keeping inside you. That's when I knew that's what I wanted to do. But it's in those moments of encouragement where you go, I can do this.
Right before we begin this interview, you shared with me that you are working on a new project. Are you able to reveal anything about that album?
Pretty open with my projects that I'm working on, especially in the sense that anytime I write a new song, I go ahead and play it more often than not. I want to know how listeners feel about it. I want to have a pretty good idea of the arrangement before I ever go into the recording studio. I want to go into the studio pretty prepared. Just want to wing it. Although there are times when winging it is really appropriate and you're just going to see what you can make in the moment, and it just can be complete magic. But overall, I like to have a good idea of where I want to go with the album. So this particular album is called Sometimes a Girl Needs the Blues, and it's going to be a country album with a lot of blues influences in it. And we are just getting started, so I don't really have too many details other than all the songs are written, and we're in the studio right now making it.
You've got a song on your Reboot album. And quickly, before we get to that, let me remind everybody that we have pictures and a article written about Jenni Dale Lord, and also availability of some of her music also in the Free Range House of Treasures there at freerangetexan.net. The article and the pictures is in the blog, and the music is available not only on the blog but also in the Free Range House of Treasures. Tell us a little bit of the backstory on Out of the Blue, because it sounds personal.
Well, to be honest with you, 99% of my songs are completely real and completely personal. There's an occasional time when I want to, write about something that I didn't experience, but more often than not, it is totally real and totally personal. And yes, Out of the Blue is a song I wrote when I was living in Austin, and I had come home to see my family, and while I was here in Lubbock, met somebody, and we ended up striking up a long-distance relationship, and that's basically what that song is about, is having to deal with love with several hundred miles in between.
Jenni Dale Lord, it is such a pleasure to have you aboard, and we appreciate you so much spending your time. I understand you are on your way out the door to another commitment this morning, and we're going to turn you loose, but thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate you reaching out and coming to see me on Friday and getting to meet you and having a wonderful conversation with you. And I appreciate the support more than you know.
And now on the Free Range Texan podcast, here's a song called Out of the Blue by Jenni Dale Lord.
I know that it's too early to say those words to you, so I'll just keep them in my heart like it's telling me to. So you never heard me, but you're smart, I'm sure you've got a clue. I can't say them out loud, but baby, I think I do. Oh yeah, baby, I think I do. One day I'd like to hold you for more than just tonight. 'Cause I'd like the chance to top everything that felt so right. If you thought that it was good before, well, I've got a surprise coming for you. 'Cause I can feel it when I touch you, baby, I think I do. Oh yeah, baby, I think I do. I think I might. I think about you day and night. I think I'm scared. Well, I know it's true, but I can't believe that I found you out of the blue. Baby, I think I do. Right now you're headed northbound, driving so far away. Just my luck, I'd fall for someone clear across the state. So I'm counting down the hours and the minutes until I'm next to you. And with everyone that passes, baby, I think I do. Oh yeah, baby, I think I do. I think I might. I think about you day and night. I think I'm scared. Well, I know it's true, but I can't believe that I found you out of the blue. Baby, I think I do. I think you know. I think these feelings, they have to show. I think I'm scared, but I'll make it through. 'Cause I can't believe that I found you out of the blue. Baby, I think I do. Out of the blue.
You've been listening to the Free Range Talent File. If you'd like more information about our guests, just go to our website at freerangetexan.net. Also, submissions to be interviewed on our program can also be submitted on freerangetexan.net.
Whoa there, Betsy. Did you smell that? No, now that there's right pretty smelling, don't you think?
Hey there, Desert Rat. What are you doing?
Well, howdy there, stranger. Mean old Betsy here caught us a whiff of something plumb pretty smelling. It ain't you, is it?
No, that's a State of Texas scented candle. It's the scent of ruby red grapefruit and leather. Available on the freerangetexan.net website.
Hear that, Betsy? Grapefruit and leather. Hoo-wee. We need one of them for my tent.
It's literally a hand-poured soy candle available in 2 sizes. And it comes in a gift box.
Betsy, let's just mosey on over to the truck stop and order us a 55-gallon barrel of that stuff.
Yeah, a State of Texas scented candle. Available at the Free Range Texan House of Treasures. Where's that, you say? Well, it's out yonder at freerangetexan.net. Not available in 55-gallon drums.
Dagnabbit.
Hi, this is Michael Shawn. Today's true story comes from my heart. James Everett Bowman was my grandpa. Most folks just called him Everett. He was born in 1887, and when old Michael was growing up, I spent most every day with him on our horse ranch in West Texas. Well, let's just start by telling you that he was the oldest of 10 kids growing up in a dirt floor cabin in the woods of Indiana. His father, my great-grandfather, was a tall, handsome, decidedly worthless riverboat gambler who left on one of his many excursions and simply was never heard from again. Everett's mom took in laundry to make ends meet, and at the age of 16 years, he was the man of the house. So at that tender age, he took a job that he was particularly well suited for. It was a time when steam locomotives began to cross the entire United States. Boxcars would be used to ship the more valuable horses to new owners back and forth across the U.S. The journey would often take days, and the precious cargo would have to be fed, watered, and cared for. In those days, that meant riding alongside the horse for days at a time. Trains would only stop for some towns and water stops for steam locomotives. It was the dead of winter in 1903. A mare had been picked up in St. Louis, needed to be shipped to a ranch in northern Arizona. Everett would be caretaker while the horse crossed the plains, the Rocky Mountains, and on to Arizona. The boxcar was crossing Raton Pass, going up in southern Colorado, and expected to come down in northern New Mexico. At the top of the pass, a blinding blizzard was in a full-blown fury. The entire train became stranded on top of Raton Pass for a total of 8 days. The snow drifted to the top of the boxcars, and the only access was a small trap door on the roof. There was no heat, just the coal oil lantern. Railroad workers dropped bits of food and water down to Everett. The first day out from St. Louis, he had stepped on a spike sticking up through the boxcar floor, and now it had become infected. He could feel and see it becoming worse in the dim lantern light. He cleaned the wound best he could, but it needed attention by whatever doctors could do in that day and time. And then, of course, there was his constant companion, the horse. 8 days and nights later, in the frozen dawn, tracks had been cleared enough for the frozen train to break free, down Raton Pass, into New Mexico prairies. Thankfully, at the first town, they had a doctor, and Everett managed to save his foot. The horse was delivered in Arizona, and Everett caught the next train back towards Indiana. My grandpa. I'm Michael Shawn. We're at the Campfire. Adios, my friends.
A big shout out and a thank you to Jenni Dale Lord for being on our podcast. Story about my grandpa is always fun to share. And of course, then there is my last ride. I know a lot of you were expecting that to end up in intensive care. That was some other rides I had, but clearly that one I told you about, for some strange reason, turned out to be my last ride. Hey, we'll do it again in 2 weeks. You can listen to this one as many times as you like. Thanks to the folks at 18PR. If you're thinking about podcasting, or if you need advertising or public relations, those folks at 18PR are definitely the people to talk to. Maybe you could hire the A-Team. Well, thanks for riding with us. It's always good to have you on board. Our numbers are growing, and all y'all out there are the reasons why. We appreciate it. FreeRangeTexan.net. Might as well check in. Take 'em home, sweetie pie.
Thank y'all for listening to the Free Range Texan podcast, produced at A-Team PR Studios out yonder in West Texas, with our host, who's been voted the hardest working man in podcasting, Michael Shawn. Feedback or submissions to our program can be submitted on our website, freerangetexan.net. That's freerangetexan.net. This is Sweetie Pie on behalf of Michael Shawn and the crew here in Studio A, where we're all looking forward to spending time with you on our next bi-weekly episode of the Free Range Texan podcast. Y'all come back now, you hear?
Tower, this is Free Range Texan Airways, Podcast 1, ready for takeoff.
Podcast 1, you're cleared for takeoff.
Nose up. Check wheels up.
Wheels up.
Reduce flaps. Mr. Sanders, take us to 10,000 feet. Bring us around to a course of south by southwest.
10,000 feet, south by southwest. Aye, Captain.
Engage autopilot.